Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and today I will be going over the events of the 10th of August, and I'm going to leave the events in Crimea for the end of the video. But let's get into this. In Kherson, there's not much besides Ukraine reporting that they struck 4 S-300 anti-air complexes near Novakakovka, which would sort of go hand in hand with reports of explosions in the city last night, and there were some videos of the loud noises. So I guess it's possible. Besides that, there's not much on this front. We did hear of another Bayraktar TB2 drone being shot down. I'll show the photo of that over here. We have the date as July of 2021, which is interesting because it's possible that based on the cage code that it was shipped before the beginning of the war. So this comes from the first batch that Ukraine always had even before the beginning of the conflict, and it was assumed by a lot um, that these original batches were all destroyed by Russian airstrikes or shot down and stuff like that. But some of them are still present. So yeah, some of them did survive, and it just goes to show how many Ukraine did have. And Russia, they actually want to get their hands on some of these drones. There was talks between Putin and Erdogan in their meeting about this. So Erdogan, he's sort of playing both sides in this regard because he is continuing to allow the shipment of these drones. There was even talks about building a facility for the building of Bayraktar drones within Ukraine. And Russia, they promised that they would decimate that facility the second it was built. But that's really it in terms of Kherson. Now let's move on to Zaporizhia, where there were a lot of rumors of a new offensive starting soon along this line. And of course, the aim would be to take the city, which is it's a key city for Russia if they want to declare victory in this war, because they've already integrated the southern part of Zaporizhia into Russia in many ways, and leaving the main city under Ukrainian hands would be a pretty bad showing for them. So what's being said is that it would concentrate on Orikhiv, Huliaipoli. These are the two main cities that are holding the Ukrainian defense. So the positions there would have to be overrun, and then they would have to advance towards Zaporizhia. There could also be another attack on Zaporizhia by entering the Dnipro Oblast from here, taking Nikopol, Maharnets, and then actually reaching Zaporizhia from both sides. That is certainly possible given the fact that Russia has built up a lot of troops and BTGs in Kherson on both the eastern and western sides of the oblast, and they also have a lot of BTGs in Zaporizhia, and the Ukrainian formations in Zaporizhia aren't the best at the moment. It is one of the um, less tended to front lines, so look out for whatever happens in Zaporizhia in the future. We also have news of the political situation with the Zaporizhia power plant, where Russia is requesting a UN Security Council meeting tomorrow, August 11th, in regards to the crisis, and they're blaming Ukraine, of course. And they've also started bolstering their air defenses around here to prevent any more kamikaze drone attacks or shelling or anything like that, because it has been a prime target. And Russia has really they've shot down some of the drones, but besides that, a lot of the Ukrainian attacks have been successful on the power plant, although there has been no major crisis as of yet. So that is good for all of humanity. But yeah, the U.S., they're also demanding that Russia return this plant around here to the Ukrainians. The Biden press secretary, she said that, and I find that pretty comical that they would even try to morally grandstand in such a way, because it's pretty obvious Russia wouldn't. comply with such a demand. But anyway, let's move on to some shelling around here because I don't know if it was in response to the attack on Crimea or if it was in response to the political crisis with the Zaporizhia power plant, but there was a lot of shelling of Nikopol and Maharnets recently. Last night it was talked about a lot, and there were headlines from the New York Times saying that it was a missile strike, but others were saying it was shelling. Either way, in these two cities, 13 civilians were killed, 11 injured, and then 5 of them were seriously injured, according to the Ukrainian sources over there. And remember, these two cities are very close to the power plant, and they've been used as the staging grounds for attacks on the power plant. So that's probably why they were targeted. Anyway, let's move on to the front line around here in Donetsk, where we have some news from the front line around Pesky. Nothing really changed here, but the Russian Ministry of Defense, they are saying that the 56th Motorized Infantry Brigade, they've lost up to 70% of their combat effectiveness due to huge losses and massive amount of casualties. Now, despite that fact, we haven't seen any frontline changes over here over the past few days. That might be because Russia is conducting another one of these operational pauses over after they did advance a little bit, and maybe they'll then continue after they do some like transitions of forces. Maybe they'll deploy some Chechen forces towards the battles here, since we haven't heard much of the Chechens since the battles in Lysychansk. Anything is possible. For now, there seems to be a pause, and Ukraine does hold on to these high-rise buildings around here. It sort of does remind me of Pavlov's house, since, yeah, they've been holding on very fiercely to this. But anyway, that's really it for here. We're just hearing more of the same along the Donetsk front in terms of shelling and aviation strikes. There was talk about a little bit of an advance um, along this town over here, Staromikhalivka. So that does confirm that there's been at least some fighting on the eastern outskirts of Krasnohorivka. But again, we don't even have confirmation from Russian sources that there's fighting within the town itself. Anyway, let's move on to here in Zaitseve, where I had this as under full Russian control, but then I talked yesterday about how that's probably not true, and I said I changed the map, so now I did. This area is under the Ukrainian control for now. There were videos of fighting on. It's not really known where the fighting actually occurred. They were saying it was on the outskirts of the town, the Russian sources. So we do know that there's at least fighting in the town for now. It is contested, and Ukraine does have several lines of trenches in the town and some pretty difficult defensive positions to overrun. I still do have Dakha as under the Russian control, though. Um, Besides Dakha, we also know that Khlatsove is now fully under control of the Russians. We've known that for a few days now, but now there's finally video footage of this, and now I'll anticipate video footage from Dakha as well, since they are very close. Just takes take a few minutes to walk to Dakha. Besides that, again, nothing in Kadema, nothing in Zaiseve. But Ukraine, they did admit that they've lost control over Vershina, and that attacks on this Zaiseve are occurring. So that's important. They also admit that Pokrovske is now lost. So that is important. They also admitted that there was an attack on Pithorodny, this town over here, but the Ukrainians say that it was a failed assault in that the Russians were pushed back. But the Russians, at least some sources that are aligned with Russia, they are claiming that Russia entered the town and that they're having some success over there. Either way, it does imply that there is a Russian presence close to the town, so I just shifted the front line a little bit to the west over here to show that. In Bakhmut, again, we don't have much to talk about, but there were rumors of this art winery around here being taken. I talked about that yesterday about the factories around here supposedly coming under Russian assault, but I feel like we would have seen video of that. We have seen really no footage of this area in a while, so I'm not going to change anything until I see footage of that. It's supposedly a sparkling wine factory, but who knows what's really going on there. Uh, I'm not going to change that for now. Anyway, the situation in Soledar is pretty interesting. The Nauf plant is now fully under the control of the LPR forces, the 6th Cossack Regiment, which was responsible for taking it. And it seems as if Chechens are actually now starting to fight again in Soledar, because we had Ramzan Kadyrov announce the cleansing of the Ukrainian forces in the plant a day before it was actually taken. And now we're also hearing that the Russians have gone as far as taking this area over here, this this really deserted plant. It used to be called the Belokamensk refractory plant, but it hasn't been unoperational since 2009 and was torn apart, which is why in these satellite images it just looks like an open area. But whatever remains of it is now under the control of the Russians and LPR troops. The quarry area is now also fully under their control. So what I'm expecting to happen is Ukraine, they're starting to withdraw, not from the city fully, but towards this area around here, perhaps. And then they're going to stop the Russian advance around these residential blocks, in these apartment buildings, sort of like they did in Pesky. And potentially they can hold out for a while. But that would also mean that all these areas around here in Bakhmutske have also have fallen or will fall in a very short amount of time, like around here. Anyway, let's move on to some other news from Yakovlivka. We have the geolocation of some Russian positions, some drones and anti-air guns, and some other military equipment, and it was around here. So that implies that at least Russia is in here, but they're probably even further north. When I put Yakovlivka as contested, I'm not saying that it's static. There might be pushes forward and then pushes back, but I can't actually geolocate every single one of those assaults because there's basically no footage from Yakovlivka. I'm just leaving the town as contested because of the copious amount of reports over the past few weeks of fighting there. Every few days or so, there are talks about fighting there, but it never seems to go anywhere, which is why I'm assuming that it is heavily fortified around here and that Russia has failed to gain any ground as a result. Nothing again on the Seversk front, so I'm going to move on now to the Kharkiv front, where we have talks about strikes on the industrial zone around here, this district, and then also on the northwestern district over here. This one, Kolodnohirsky. I think I'm saying that correctly. So these two districts, there were strikes over there. Again, that's pretty common, especially the industrial district that gets struck a lot. And then also this Saltiv district gets struck a lot. Ukrainian positions were also struck over here next to Rubizhny in Verkhney Saltiv, which implies that, yeah, it's still under the Ukrainian control. Nothing much besides that over here. So now that we've actually done a recap of the front line, I want to get into what happened in Crimea. There's a lot to get into now. So at around 3:20 p.m. in Russian time, of course, yesterday, what happened was there was some detonation in the Saki Airfield, which is one of the main airfields in Crimea. It is very important for the Russian Air Force. They have a lot of Su-30s, Su-33, Su-24 bombers stored in here, and there appears to have been several explosions. Residents reported like 7, maybe more. And what's being said is that it was there was talks about it being a strike or an accident or a sabotage operation, but the damage was pretty insane. Over here we have the take a look at this. The video of damages to the airbase. Look at this. You have cars that are in complete ruin and their windows are completely shattered. The same thing with houses as well. In about a kilometer radius of the explosions, you see a lot of that. A lot of windows broken with from footage of cars driving through the streets over there in the vicinity of the strike. Basically, what's being said is that it was a sabotage operation, although there was debate about that for about 24 hours. It's now being agreed upon by most people that it was a sabotage operation. That's according to the Washington Post. They talked to a Ukrainian source that said that it was the special forces and that they were using non-U.S. weapons in this operation of theirs. The armed forces of Ukraine, they said online that Russia lost 9 aircraft, and then there was a video of an Su-24 that was destroyed. So it is a big deal for the Russians. Um, let's look at this map of what happened because it is pretty interesting to look at. This one over here. So this guy over here, he's saying the 2 detonations they occurred at these 2 sites, and both of them, based on the videos, they occurred at pretty much the same time. So that sort of disqualifies the fact that it was missiles, especially given the fact that nobody in the area even saw missiles. It wasn't in the videos. No residents talked about it. So we can rule that out. And this explosion, it was of such a huge magnitude that it could be seen, it could be heard from the beach, which was pretty far away from where the 2 explosions actually happened. Um, look at these 2 sites where the explosions happened based on the previous map. And then there were a bunch of videos from here on the beach with tourists that were going into hiding, and it was pretty visible for them. I'll show a 2D version of that over here now on the map. So look, the airport is around here, and then you had a bunch of videos from this strip over here, where the beach is located, all around here, and they could see it pretty visibly. So yeah, it was a pretty huge detonation. There were a lot of munitions stored in here, and that certainly caused a secondary explosion, which destroyed a lot of Russian aircraft, which was being used in the war effort. So it is a big deal for the Russians. And given the fact that the explosion was so large, of course, there were casualties. There were 13 wounded, and 1 person was killed, and there were 2 children that were wounded out of those 13 wounded. So this contradicts originally what the Russians said. They said that there were 0 casualties. The Crimean health ministry, they later clarify the situation. and updated the amount of casualties. So clearly, this was a very huge explosion and caused a lot of havoc. Something interesting that was noted by AZ military, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he said that there were American RQ-4A UAVs being stationed around the Black Sea on the pretty sure 8th of August. And on the 8th of August, it was circling around for about the entire day. And then on the 9th of August, when the strike occurred, which was yesterday, there were two recon aircraft that were situated near Romania. So that is pretty suspicious, given the fact that America has already previously given information about Russian military positions and Russian equipment, like they did with the Moskva ship. They gave Ukraine a lot of information about the location, and they basically supplemented a lot of the strikes that Ukraine has conducted, the most notable ones. And to lend credence to this fact, we have satellite imagery from Radio Svoboda, which is I think it's connected to like a radio for Europe or something. But they have satellite pictures from 4 hours before the strike that occurred, the explosion that occurred in this Saki airfield, and it shows how ripe it was for destruction. It was a very good target, so you got to commend Ukraine for actually pulling it um, through. The fact that they were able to get like 300 kilometers behind the front lines with these sabotage um, operators is pretty crazy. So it is possible that they got help from somebody within Crimea. So you might have to look out for that for some possible Russian retribution for the people responsible. Look, you have all these aircraft stationed here. They're like sitting ducks for the Ukrainian saboteurs. So no wonder it was a prime target, and it was most likely coordinated with the US and with NATO. And this is within Russian territory, not even within the territory of like Donetsk, Luhansk, or the occupied oblasts. It's within actual Russian territory because Crimea is considered to be an integral part of the Russian Federation. So it is a pretty interesting escalation, although I don't think we'll see any Russian response that is different from what we've seen already, because stuff like this has happened before. We saw how the Ukrainians they struck Belgorod, Kursk with the Tachka ooze and actually killed a civilian, but that didn't really change anything in terms of the dynamics of the war. Again, I don't think anything will change as well now. It is a pretty big blow, though, for the Russian aircraft in the area, although they can probably, not sure if they can repair those, but they can produce more in due time. But besides that, I don't have much to say. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later.